up, Mike? Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto, where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto, where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto, like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love. I'm in Toronto.
Welcome to episode 1737 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. Toronto's Waterfront BIA. Check out what's happening on Toronto's waterfront this summer. Toronto Maple Leafs baseball. Get your butts to Christie Pitts this summer for the best baseball in the city outside the dome. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Building Toronto's Skyline. A podcast and book from Nick Iones. And Ridley Funeral Home. Pillars of the community since 1921. Today, returning to Toronto Mic'd, it's Gare Joyce. Welcome back, Gare.
Great to be back.
I heard from my buddy Elvis, and we won't name names or dox anybody, but there's a young person, like we're talking, I don't know, 11 years old or something, 10 years old, named Gary in his neighborhood. And I actually was told we're not making any more Garys. Did you know there's now some new Garys?
This I didn't know. Is it a 1R or 2R Gary?
Oh, I'm almost certain it's 1R. Most of the Garys are 1R Garys.
Yeah, I was born actually like Gary Volk, a 2R Gary. They're even rarer than the 1R version.
They haven't made a 2R Gary in decades.
A long, long time.
You're a vintage model. How you doing, man? How is life in Kingston, Ontario, Canada?
Oh, glorious. This is the first time I've been on since I took a position with the Kingston Whig Standard, which I did back in March, and ostensibly to cover sports, but it goes with the job that you're doing news side half the time because there's only so much in the way of sports in a calendar year. So I'm kind of the sports and courts reporter, and which is fun. Fun. I've been covering a sex crimes trial all summer long, so I've divided my time between the courthouse and the arena, but I enjoy it. I don't golf, and I don't no crimes against golf, but it's a fun gig, and I'm really enjoying it.
I think that sounds like a match made in heaven. What a institution, the Kingston Whig Standard. And you, as I've told you many times, your head gets bigger each time I say it, but you are one of this country's great sports writers. And beyond sports, of course, but you're such a great writer. I feel like this is a match made in heaven. I'm glad it came together.
Oh, I'm overjoyed. It's a perfect fit. When I signed up, my editor, Jan Murphy, said, look, there's no travel, right? And I was like, that's a plus, not a minus. Right. It's at a scale that I enjoy, and I get to be close to the games that I would pay to go watch. It's great that way. So I'm happy. I don't do crosswords. I do stories. It's just it's a neat match, kind of late in life. I'm the soon to be 69-year-old cub reporter. It's a great entry level position. I just happened to reach it when I was hitting the exits. I wish I had this job when I was 21. And I'm going to be doing it when I'm 71, probably.
Well, FOTMs across the country are happy for you. And speaking of this country, you kind of, not raised a stink, but you got some attention nationally for a story that you published recently. But before we dive into, I'm calling this episode, if it's okay with you. Well, actually, I don't care if it's okay with you, Gare. It's my podcast, okay?
Yeah.
You don't clear your head. You don't write your headlines at the Kingston Whig Standard, right?
Oh, yes, I do.
Okay. Because sometimes these scribes tell me, we don't write the headlines. You write your own headlines.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. Part of the job.
Okay, well, you don't run those by me, so I'm not running the titles of this episode by you, but I'm going to call it Ron versus Don Part 2. I'm curious, Gare, if you heard the recent episode of Toronto Mic'd. I recorded it, I guess, just before I went camping, but I talked to John Wing. Just a general recap of Ron versus Don, a lot of clips in that episode. So I'm curious what you thought of that episode, and if before we dive into your contribution to this story, which is significant, maybe do you want to do any fact checking or set the story straight on anything that was said in that episode of John Wing, Ron versus Don? What did you think?
Well, no fact check, but the one thing I would say is I think that both you and John I know from comedy circles, and I've been on shows with John, and I remember meeting him at the Rivoli and following him. And what I would say, I know that you kind of poo-pooed the idea that Don Cherry wanted out of his gig, and I guess you expressed doubt or skepticism about what Ron MacLean was saying to me, and I can tell you, we don't know Don Cherry as well as Ron MacLean does. And if Ron is saying it, he's saying it from a point of experience and authority and proximity that we don't have. Our exposure to Don Cherry is largely through the screen or through the speaker or in print. And Ron's was lived, and he was around him more than not just us, probably more than many spouses would be around somebody. So I think that Ron has a better idea of these things than not only we do, but than you guys were giving him credit for. So I'm going to take I'm going to take what he said on trust. He had no vested interest in saying it. He had no agenda. He was coming from the right place and with a wealth of experience, and it didn't particularly surprise me that it came out or that what he said was what he believed to be the case. You suggested that Don Cherry didn't want to go out that way. I don't know. What exactly did he want a farewell tour? How did he envision it happening? It's funny. Lately, I've been reading a lot about Mark Twain, which doesn't seem to have anything to do with this. But Mark Twain was famously, the persona of Samuel Clemens, and two very different. One is the author, and the other is the persona. And I do think that was the case with Don Cherry. What we know of Don Cherry at a distance is the persona, and Ron knew the original article, and um, I don't know how you exit a persona. And Don Cherry's on-air character was his persona. How do you wind it up? Um, and that it would be a meltdown, a confrontation with authority, all of that. That sort of seems more of a fit than, hey, this is my last season, and we're going to do a tribute. I don't think that was ever in the cards. There couldn't be a graceful exit that would well suit the persona.
Now, for those who missed Ron versus Don Part 1 with John Wing, can you just succinctly remind the listenership, what did Ron tell you, and why were you talking to Ron in the first place?
Okay, I'll take that in reverse order.
Yeah, sure.
So I when I went to the Wig, one of the original uh, items on my to-do list was to prepare something about Don Cherry. Now, not telling tales out of school with someone who's in his 90s. If you're doing something, it might be utilized as an appreciation or an obituary or whatever. So that certainly was something that I was tasked to do, and I was fine with that. And it was on sort of like an indefinite assignment, and I was talking to people when I could, but after Don's season end podcast, where and I know that you played that or played portions of it with John Wing on the Ron versus Don.
Right.
It sounded like it was the curtain dropping, and Don sounded particularly frail and not particularly engaged. So that kind of made it a code blue a situation with my assignment with the Wig, and it became a priority. Like let's get this done. And certainly the fallout after that podcast, there was in the news cycle. Is this the end of the public Don Cherry? And Joe Warmington with the Sun reached out to Cherry and kind of as his media whisperer, Cherry and Sun assured people that the intention was to pick up the podcast where it left off next fall, whatever. It certainly didn't sound that way. I had to ramp it up and get my piece together. So the piece that I envisioned was I'd write about Don Cherry in a very local, that is Kingston, context. And not only was Cherry born here, and his brother Dick Cherry was a former NHLer and longtime high school teacher and principal and judo instructor, among many other things. He passed away earlier this year. Many of my newfound friends in Kingston were quite close to Dick, and were socialized with him, and many went to school at the school where he was a teacher and principal. So I wanted to do a story on Cherry, his somewhat about his youth, but more about in adulthood, how he had a cottage on Wolfe Island, just across the water here, a ferry ride from downtown Kingston. And that was going to be the gist of my story. And to an extent, his best friends outside of Toronto and the sort of media world were very humble folk on Wolfe Island, notably, uh, notably a mechanic and his wife, but also the general store owner. I was going to try and portray a slice of Don Cherry's life away from the studio, away from the arenas, sort of, the Samuel Clements behind the Mark Twain popular famous character. And I reached out to many people, people that played for him. Rod Graham is a former who played for Cherry in Rochester and is a former Bruin, played for Cherry there as well. Talked to him, Gilmore, Muller, the most recognizable names of their generation who in Kingston who had strong personal connections with Cherry. Doug in particular, as he said, Don was closer to my parents than he was to me, and he coached my brother in Rochester. And I reached out to Ron to talk about the time that he spent on Wolfe Island at Cherry's summer place. That was it. That was why I was calling him. Now, back in 2018, I remember Don traveling with Ron during the Stanley Cup final between Washington and Vegas. And I just, at the time, Don Cherry was so dependent on Ron getting him to the airport, getting his flight, getting him to the hotel, they moved in tandem, joined at the hip throughout the entire couple of weeks. There was something kind of beautiful about the support that Ron was giving Don. And you consider all the abuse that Don Cherry had heaped on Ron MacLean over the years. There was something sort of saintly about it.
And this is 2018, right? Just to give people...
2018.
And Cherry at this time, he's 84 years young.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, like literally getting, and I didn't put it in the article, but it like a bathroom break at the arena. Ron was walking Don to the men's room through the concourse of the arena in Washington, through hundreds of people. And I was actually on the flight with them from Toronto to Vegas. So I saw all this in action, and we sat at dinner, a big Sportsnet dinner, Sportsnet and Hockey Night dinner, and Don had carved me on Coach's Corner back in '96, and when I was at the Globe, and in 2000 when his Ice Dogs were the worst team in junior hockey history, and I was at the Ottawa Citizen, and the National Post was printing features that I was doing about the mismanagement of his ice dogs. So I, I, I never regarded it as a vendetta that I had with Don Cherry. He mentioned me a couple of times and mentioned my stories more than a couple of times, and kind of kind of shit all over me. And so what? When we sat down at dinner in 2018, didn't didn't phase me at all. And we just had a great night. And at the end of it, um, uh, Cherry said to Ron, who's the guy? And he's like, that's Gare Joyce, the guy that you carved. He goes, oh, Ron ended up saying, you became a good friend of his that night. Right? And I was like, oh, I don't know about that, but um, I approached Ron in 2018 and I said, look, can I do a story about you and Don behind the scenes? Uh, and Ron seemed open to it. Um, and uh, I tried to follow up with him over that summer and thereafter a little bit. During the hockey season, there was just no way that we were going to get it done. At that time, there was still hometown hockey, and his plate was full. I figured it was going to be something that we would get done during the summer, and it just didn't come to pass. Uh, and I I exchanged a couple of emails with Ron over the years, and one when I was laid off at Sportsnet. So we'd always been pretty good. Um, and when I called him up uh, about for the purposes of this story that I was doing for the Whig Standard and for Post Media, uh, he said, I don't know if you know, but Don was really sick that following year, 2019, the Boston St. Louis final. And now I don't know if you remember this. I was also really sick that year. That's when I had my bacterial pneumonia,
Right.
and I actually got it in Boston. So um, it turned out that I had a case of pneumonia in Boston 2 weeks before Don Cherry had one in the very same place. Um, and Ron volunteered all of this in our conversation about Wolfe Island. In fact, he kind of led with it. Um, and I was just sort of stunned. I had no idea because I wasn't around uh, uh, for Game 7. I had to come home and I was in hospital for 11 days. I always sort of thought of myself as patient zero for COVID. I had all the COVID symptoms, except COVID was still, 6 or 8 months off. Uh, well, I can tell you, bacterial pneumonia is no fun. I don't know what type of pneumonia Don Cherry would have had, uh, but pneumonia is no fun at any age. I can't imagine it in your 80s. Um, it, Ron volunteered all of this, and it seemed very much, kind of on point with regard to, eh, maybe this is a cue, maybe this is a sign, that we're entering the home stretch. The finish line for Coach's Corner is near. If the finish line for many other things isn't near. Uh, I was kind of gobsmacked when Ron was telling me all this, and if Ron told me stuff off the record, I couldn't say what it was, and I couldn't tell you if he did or not. What he told me uh, on the record is in the story, and uh, I I was in the original story that came out. Uh, oh God, this is about a month ago now, I guess, um, and created kind of a tempest. Um, but I, I can't imagine. I know that people will read it, and I know Cherry came out after and said, "Oh, it's all wrong." I that oh, I that I that I went to hospital. No, I was that while Ron was having beer, he kind of played around with exactly what Ron said, and what Ron to this point has not said. I didn't say any of this. This isn't true. He hasn't walked back anything. The only thing that Ron has said is that he regrets being quite so open about Don Cherry's illness.
Here, let me step in, Gare, just for a moment to kind of do a little recap here. So,
Yeah.
June 2019, we're talking about, and it's in Boston. That's where
Yeah.
Game 7 was. And the MacLean quote to you, and again, just to recap what we just heard, but you were talking to Ron MacLean about like Don Cherry's cottage on Wolfe Island, which he sold in 2019, and sort of the Don Cherry at Wolfe Island. And it's actually this longer piece that dropped when I was camping is excellent. Like it gives you a kind of an idea, like you said, the Samuel Clements behind the Mark Twain. I found it very interesting. But the Ron MacLean just volunteers as information about the health of Don Cherry in June 2019. And to quote Ron MacLean to you, and I know you keep your receipts here, it's Gary Bettman, according to Ron MacLean, as he spoke to you on the phone, I guess. Gary Bettman told Ron MacLean that Don Cherry was in the hospital.
Yep.
And subsequently, Don Cherry has said basically, I didn't go to the hospital. I went to my hotel room or something in Boston. So he specifically says, in Boston, I didn't go to the hospital. I went to my hotel room. So Don Cherry denies it, but that kind of makes sense. I talked about this with John Wing. But then Ron MacLean expressed regret for disclosing this private medical information, but did not walk back the story. So, you have your story from Ron MacLean, but regardless, this June 2019 health scare, Ron thinks that's why Don Cherry orchestrated this exit strategy with, of course, the Remembrance Day Coach's Corner, where, the you people, you come here for our milk and honey. That spiel, which, again, in the first Ron versus Don I did a few weeks ago, you can hear that entire clip, a Remembrance Day thing that Don did every year. Mm-hmm. But this is all coming at you from Ron MacLean on the record, and you were just talking about a cottage on Wolfe Island.
Yeah. I did not, I had no knowledge, nor was there any sort of public discussion about Don Cherry being sick in 2019. It wasn't out there. And in the course of our conversation, and it's in this story in the Whig Standard and in Post Media, Ron said that he reached out to Bobby Orr. Can you get Don into a hospital or get him to a doctor, or get a doctor or get him to a hospital? And that was when they arrived. What Don Cherry has said by way of a denial is that when he arrived in Boston, he didn't go to hospital.
Right.
Almost certainly true, because Ron MacLean never suggested that. He suggested that they had to take Don Cherry away on a cart after the flight. Ron went and got his bags. They took him to a health club, put him in a sauna to try or steam bath to try and clear his lungs. It was only after the final game, before the trip home, and when Ron MacLean had spoken to Bobby Orr, Bobby Orr's, as Ron recounted it, Bobby Orr said, "Don't let any of this get out. Keep quiet about this." And I can make my own guesses or educated guesses about why you don't want it out. Um, One, it's not exactly the Don Cherry persona to be at all vulnerable. Two, Don Cherry's, he has a year-to-year contract, right? If there were health concerns about, and if there were health concerns or concerns about Don Cherry's ability to do Coach's Corner going forward, I mean, that would be enough to put Hockey Night in Canada and Sportsnet's management on Spilkus. There would be some reluctance to commit a significant sum of money to someone who is at all a medical risk. A good reason to keep all this quiet. And that's the advice of Bobby Orr, not just as a former player, but also someone who negotiates contracts as an agent.
Sure.
So, that's kind of explicable. What I would say, and of course, it was drowned out in all of this, but sort of knowledge in Kingston. The week that Don Cherry was let go by Hockey Night and Sportsnet, that was the week that the sale of his much desired, treasured cottage closed. Not that it went for sale, not that it sold. It closed. It had sold a couple of months before that.
Okay, podcast fans, I'm going to shout out a few events you need to know about, particularly if you are in the Greater Toronto area. Here's a few things to note. One, this is kind of exciting. On August 30th, Great Lakes Brewery has a Brewed for You festival. They did this last year, and this year it's bigger and better than ever. There's 2 sessions on August 30th. One is like noon to 4 p.m., and the second one, which is adults only, 19 plus, is 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. It's $30 for a ticket. You get to attend the festival. You get a couple of tokens. You get a glass. It's a beautiful Brewed for You festival glass. You get access to more than just Great Lakes Brewery. A whole bunch of Ontario's best breweries will be there. You get live music. The first session has a band called Born in the 80s. You'll get a lot of 80s jams. And the second session has the Discmen, and you'll get a bunch of 90s jams. If you want to attend Brewed for You, go to greatlakesbeer.com/BFY. Get your ticket now. That's going to be awesome. No ticket required for Toronto Maple Leafs games at Christie Pitts. We've got home games on Saturday, August 2nd. This is a 7:30 game under the lights against the London Majors. And then there's another night game on Saturday, August 9th, and then another one on Saturday, August 16th. 7:30 starts at Christie Pitts. So the next 3 Saturday nights, get your butts to Christie Pitts, get a Leafs lager, get a hot dog, not a hot dog, and enjoy great baseball under the lights. I'm literally going to be on a little boat tour to the Toronto Island tomorrow night. I can't wait for that because I love Toronto's waterfront. There are many events happening on the waterfront. It's not just great cycling and Trillium Park and the Toronto Island and the Budweiser stage, but there's an event happening at Harbourfront. It's free. It's called the Habari Africa Festival, and you can celebrate African culture right here in Toronto. It's an incredible cultural experience, a vibrant, multidisciplinary African arts festival. It's returning to Toronto, again, all ages, free, a fantastic weekend of rich art, tastes, and sounds from the African continent. This is happening August 8 to August 10. I love Palma pasta. I'm going to have TMLX 21 at Palma Pasta. I'm going to have the date soon, but it might be the last Saturday of November. Just pencil that in, but don't put it in ink because I just have to confirm it. But palmapasta.com is where I go to get delicious, authentic Italian food. We love the support of Palma Pasta. We also love the support of recyclemyelectronics.ca. That's where you go if you have old electronics, old devices, old cables. You don't throw it in the garbage. We know those chemicals will end up in our landfill. That's no good. Go to recyclemyelectronics.ca and put in your postal code and find out where to drop that off. It is July 31st, and I'm excited that this afternoon, Brad Jones from Ridley Funeral Home will visit, and we will record a new episode of Life's Undertaking. And it's a wonderful podcast from Ridley Funeral Home, a family-run funeral home that sells only Canadian products. They offer Northern casket to their families. I love that it's Canadian-owned. They got great Canadian products, and they'll take care of you and your loved ones at Ridley Funeral Home. Now back to Gare Joyce.
He was not coming back to Kingston, to Wolfe Island, as of the summer of 2019 after that illness. I don't think it's much of a coincidence that he got out of Coach's Corner and out of his spot on the island at the same time.
And I read in your great piece, but what excuse did Don Cherry give his neighbors, his friends on Wolfe Island? What was the excuse he used for why he was selling his cottage and leaving Wolfe Island?
Yeah, good point. So what he had told people was that his wife, Luba, had scares on the drive from Toronto to Kingston. You know, the 401, it is for people in Kingston who make that trip regularly. I mean, it is a death race. I know in talking to Doug Gilmore, you know, like he's had, he was doing that trip on a weekly basis when he was GM of the Frontenacs. And you know, he said it probably took as much of a physical toll on him as hockey did. You know, just as far as the nerves go and blood pressure and whatever else. It's tough. Don Cherry said that it was his wife's scares. Take it for what it's worth. Don Cherry wasn't going to say, you know what, I don't know about you know, living on an island where you could be 2 hours or more from a paramedic. It takes you, God knows, with ferry availability to get to a hospital, all of that. You know, that's someone who's had a brush with mortality would want something a little more secure in those terms. Is kind of a fit to me.
Yeah, let's not bury this lead here. You disclose that there's no doctor practicing on Wolfe Island in 2020. Well, he was 2019, I guess, when he sold the cottage. But there was no, and they're probably still the case, I'm assuming, possibly, but no doctor practicing on Wolfe Island. If you get sick or you have an illness or an injury on Wolfe Island, it could be 2 hours before the paramedics come and offer assistance.
All of that. So, you know, that's in good weather.
Right. No, listen. Wow, it's a young man's sport, as they say. But, okay, so we have in June 2019, Ron MacLean talks about this health scare. So where Gare Joyce is not hiding his battle of pneumonia, we can understand why Don Cherry would hide his battle of pneumonia. So in June 20, go ahead.
We can understand it.
Sure.
It doesn't make any sense, right? Like, I don't know why saying that you had pneumonia makes you at all vulnerable. but I guess the macho creed or whatever,
Right.
Admit nothing.
Well, no weakness, no vulnerability. You wrote this in your piece, and I think that nails it. And I think this is what John Wing and I talked about.
Those were Bobby Orr's words.
Right, Bobby Orr. So June 2019, this all goes down, and then subsequently he sells the cottage on Wolfe Island, which you mentioned closed the same week he was let go from the Sportsnet gig, the Coach's Corner, and that exit strategy that Ron MacLean talks about. Ron, like you said off the top, Ron knows Don better than either of us. Ron, this story you tell in the 2018, it's kind of beautiful, like that Ron is there to help Don, get to the washroom, do everything, carry his bags, whatever it takes. It's kind of a beautiful thing. And I think that's part of why I'm personally so interested in Ron versus Don, because as people will hear in the John Wing episode, you can kind of hear the origin story, which is the pen flip, really, right? It's it's all discussed in there. That moment of like your meal ticket might be getting close to Don Cherry, and then Coach's Corner and the trials and tribulations thereof. It just kind of a fascinating story, and it's not over yet. We're not doing an obituary here. There's no shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. I heard that final moment of the Don Cherry podcast when it was suggested very strongly that this is the finale, this is it. And then what really hit that home for me was the official X account of the Don Cherry podcast, which I'm guessing is run by his son. I'm guessing Tim.
Yeah.
It wasn't even subtle. It was, that's it, the very last Don Cherry podcast. That's it. So it sounds like a finale. It was promoted as a finale on X. It got people like the Howard Bergers of the world all in a tizzy that, hey, this is it, the end of an era. I bought in, like it sounded like this is the end. And then that got, walked back by Don Cherry as well. Speaking of the whisperer, the official Don Cherry whisperer, Joe Warmington, you guys kind of have the same employer, right? You're both post-media guys?
We are. Funnily enough, he's a Kingston guy. He lives here half the time, and he worked at the Whig Standard years back. And it was at the Whig Standard that I guess he first connected with Don and became a near son.
So Joe Warmington,
An adopted son.
Joe Warmington, I'm just going to play this clip. As I said, I'm not going to replay all the clips I played in the John Wing episode, but I do want to play this clip to get your response, because Joe sort of calls you out on this one, so I want to give you a chance to respond. But this is basically a recorded chat. I guess it's Don Cherry's Mississauga backyard. Joe's recording it. Let's listen.
That you'd like the records set straight on the story.
I'm very disappointed in Ron that he would bring this up. And I'm very disappointed in him that he would reach back 5 years and do this.
Is he still welcome here and to call you and your friend, or is this friendship?
No, with the wife he isn't.
And how do you feel about it?
I don't have any feelings. I don't have any feelings towards Ron.
This is your wingman for almost, whatever it was, almost 40 years.
40 years. Almost 40 years.
And there's a sense of kind of almost like a betrayal a bit.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that. But I know one thing, I'm disappointed in him.
Have you talked to him?
No.
And do you want to talk to him about it, or?
No, I don't want to talk to him about it.
These stories that are being written about you now, did anybody contact you?
No.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, you think the only guy to contact me is you.
It's just basic.
Nobody. I was really surprised when Louis give me that story.
All right, Gary, doesn't name you, but that's you he's talking about.
Yeah. Well, he didn't contact me either, nor did he contact Ron MacLean. worth pointing out. I mean, when Don Cherry trashed me on Coach's Corner, did he reach out to me? No. So, you know what? I mean, I was torn. I I was looking to write my feature about Don Cherry and Wolfe Island, and what Ron MacLean said to me was newsworthy. Uh, I had to take Don Cherry at his word in 2019. Why he was out. I don't know that he was going to recant or walk back or restate anything that he had done before. Uh, I wasn't looking for a reaction from him on Ron MacLean. Uh, the story stands. The journalistic underpinnings of my story with Ron MacLean are exactly the same, no different than Joe Warmington's with Cherry after the fact. Only that mine was first and he came after.
So he doesn't finish. I noticed he starts a sentence, Joe, and he kind of abandons the sentence in the middle, doesn't actually finish it, but it sounds like he's about to say that something to the effect of like you contacting Don Cherry to get his response to the story before you publish is some. I thought he was going to say something like journalism 101 or something like that. Like, of course you do that. Not that he contacted you before that story, of course, as you mentioned, but or Ron MacLean, right? Do you feel at all, as we're talking now on July 31st, 2025, do you feel at all like maybe you should have attempted to get Don's response before publishing the story about his exit strategy of 2019?
I reached out to a Cherry. Let's put it that way. That's all I'll say.
Well, that's Tim.
I didn't reach out to Tim. Reached out to another Cherry.
Okay, another Cherry. Okay. So there was an attempt to get maybe to
family side.
Okay. So do you think that's an unfair shot by Joe Warmington? I know you guys have the same employer, but clearly he's taken shots at you without naming you. And those who know, and I'm one of the guys who knows. But do you think that was an unfair shot by Joe Warmington?
I could care less, or I guess I couldn't care less.
Right.
No, I would stand by the news value of what I wrote, and there wasn't really kind of a need to have Don Cherry's thoughts about what Ron MacLean said. I didn't see it.
Do you think the Don Cherry podcast returns when the NHL season starts up again?
Again, it's immaterial to me. I mean, I don't consider it. I'd never listened to it beforehand until that last episode. And based on the last episode, I don't even know what the next episode sounds like.
Yeah, he's showing every one of his 91 years, but Father Time comes for us all. Like that's part of the intrigue of this story is the brand of Don Cherry was always, tough guy, drop the gloves, like this, play hard, don't play like those fancy Russians or Swedes, Canadians mix it up in the corner, give us a Brendan Shanahan, whatever, Dougie Gilmour. Or Wendell Clark. I'm got to say, like the Don Cherry brand is such that it's kind of sad to watch this man age. Like it's like it reminds us all that Father Time will come for come for you, Gare. Father Time's coming for me. Nobody gets away. Nobody lives forever. It's kind of a sad reminder that we all have a fleeting moment on this big blue marble, and when it's done, it's done.
It's painful enough when it plays out privately. When it plays out publicly, it is a communal grief, and I don't know that that aging on air or aging on a podcast uh, uh, is really something that the listener should invest in, or the principal should bother with. I think what Ron had said about the podcast, uh, that after uh, Don Cherry's daughter Cindy died, that the podcast was a way of uh, Cindy and uh, and Tim and father uh, getting together each week. That it was kind of uh, a family experience, therapeutic in its own way, I guess. A bonding experience, and that with Cindy's death, the dynamic changed somewhat. Um, Don had not just that grief, but the passing of his brother Dick this spring. Uh, you know, it, it's not just his passing down in the uh, future nearer now than it was yesterday. It's not just his passing, but just to have it, death so close to him. Um, I, I I don't want to say that luster or attraction had gone off uh, the podcast, but sitting down with his son each week to do it is kind of what was serving as a reminder that his daughter, wasn't there, that Cindy wasn't there. Um, yeah, I mean, grieving doesn't need to be done in public to be real.
Absolutely. Now, I always think when I think about, this alleged exit strategy that Ron talked to you about, I always think about when I had Scott Moore in this basement when he was kind of head of Sportsnet. Well, he was head of Sportsnet. He left at that time. He was in the basement to talk about the fact that he made a decision to retire Bob Cole. Bob Cole didn't want to stop calling, still my favorite play-by-play guy of all time, but that's because I'm a Leafs guy. But Bob Cole had his final, he called his final game on April 6, 2019. So it all comes back to that 2019 playoffs there. And Bob Cole didn't want to go. And Scott Moore told him, it's time for your, farewell. Do you think maybe Sportsnet should have done the same thing with Don Cherry, or was that 1-2 punch too much for the hockey diehards across this country to stomach with Hockey Night in Canada?
Well, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
That is a tough one. I think there were considerations there that make those two very distinct.
Sure.
In separate cases. I mean, Bob Cole, wonderful, beloved play-by-play guy, but not a brand in the way that there's a coach's corner and it has to be a particular coach in that particular corner. So I don't know. I don't know that it would be so easy to be the one to tell Don Cherry, this is it. You become public enemy number one.
But as things turned out, Sportsnet took that, equivalent PR hit anyways, because the Cherry loyalists are still pissed at Ron MacLean for quote unquote throwing his buddy Don under the bus, and they're still pissed at Sportsnet for this quote unquote wokeism and taking their coach's corner away. Like, it was kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. For I can't believe I'm defending Rogers here, but this was not a no-win situation for Rogers.
Yeah, well, according to people in the loop, Don was pretty overjoyed when all those who were behind his dismissal at Rogers ended up boxing their belongings from one Mount Pleasant and taking the walk. I don't know if they came to you for an exit interview or not.
No, but that sounds like Don had some Schadenfreude there, although he wouldn't pronounce
Schadenfreude? Who's Schadenfreude?
Right, or Patty Roy. Yeah. I like that Dave Hodge clip I played on the John Wayne. So in our final moments, Garrett, were you surprised at how much noise this little this revelation you made in the Kingston Whig Standard, how much noise it made across this country?
Shocked. I was shocked. No, I mean, it was, I knew it was newsworthy. Did I know it was quite as newsworthy? I don't know. The one thing I'll say is that I was just going to embed it in my feature, which ran, I guess, the weekend before last.
Right.
Or was it last weekend?
No, 2 weekends ago. Because I know where my camping trip was. So yeah, 2 weekends ago.
It was last weekend. I timed that wrong for you. It was, yeah. So
okay.
I was just going to embed it, but I also heard that there were other media outlets looking to get in touch with Ron MacLean. And so as soon as I heard that, I thought, oh my God, like what he said to me, he might have spilled to other people, you know. So that was kind of why I did two separate pieces. And not, you know, it wasn't as if I was worried about, you know, that my long piece about Don Cherry and Wolfe Island, you know, it wasn't breaking news or anything like that, but I thought it was newsworthy. I think people kind of, you know, the reaction to it and how it was picked up and chased, and even Joe Warmington jumping in and following it suggested it was newsworthy and worth putting out there. And I hate to think that you know, people are considering what Ron MacLean did or said as evidence of betrayal or whatever. I mean, for many years, he was the best friend that Don Cherry could have professionally, and supported him as such. And and I don't know that he should have gone under in 2019 for something that Don Cherry said that he himself disagrees with and never endorsed. I feel like Ron's been victimized in all this wholly unfairly, and if anything, I'm kind of shocked that Don Cherry hasn't seemed more appreciative of the support that Ron gave him through the years, because I witnessed it and I just thought, I'm not doing that. I wouldn't, you know, I'd have trouble doing that for a spouse, let alone someone who's heaping abuse on me on Coach's Corner.
Yeah, Ron MacLean, fascinating figure, because he's been so prominent in this country particularly amongst hockey fans, but not just hockey fans, like Olympics, etc. But Ron MacLean, it seems like if you like Ron MacLean, and I'll disclose to the listenership that I really like Ron MacLean. I loved our chat on Toronto Mike. I like his take on whether it be Tragically Hip or different music. We have mutual friends. Like, I actually like the guy, and I think he does a good job on Hockey Night in Canada. But those who don't like Ron MacLean, like, it's the passionate distaste for this man, and a lot of it has to do with what happened in November 2019 with regards to Don Cherry. So I think Ron might be a damned if you do, damned if you don't guy. I have a quick questions on my way out though before you respond. Is have you talked to Ron MacLean since this story blew up? Like, what's your relationship like now with Ron MacLean?
I have not reached out to him. I've been busy with other stuff, and maybe I will. I hadn't reached out to him in 3 years before contacting him in June.
You can't answer this question, but I wonder if Ron MacLean regrets volunteering this exit strategy 2019 health scare information when you were talking about Don Cherry selling his cottage on Wolfe Island.
That is a question for him, not me.
It's on my list for his exit interview.
Yeah, I think you can get punished for telling the truth as much as covering something up. And he said, it isn't even saying the quiet part out loud. He aired things out that I guess he regrets, but anyone who thinks he didn't say it, like I posted transcripts of it.
So Pete, wait, on that note, just because we are wrapping up here, obviously, I know you got to get back to work, but so you're getting notes, or are you getting feedback that you're making this up? Like, are people suggesting that you're stirring shit by somehow misquoting Ron or making up a story?
I haven't seen anything like. Okay. Don't read the comments. Like the first rule as a reporter. Just if anyone were to come back, and think that I played with the quotes or anything like that. I posted them on my Substack.
Right.
The transcripts from a recording app, spelling mistakes and all, the automatic transcripts. Ron, of course, not only would be, I don't know if I don't think he was aware that I was recording, although I didn't say I wasn't. And I asked him to hold while I set the recording up. He would not be completely out to lunch if he were to presume that maybe there's someone who backed things up and not for publication. Let's put it that way.
Well, you're Gare Joyce, for God's sakes. You've got decades of journalistic integrity under your belt, and when you write a story, it's because you're quoting the man himself, Ron MacLean, who told you on the record. And very interesting piece about the cottage. Fascinating tidbit from Ron MacLean. I wonder now, as we say goodbye, I wonder if the next time Ron versus Don is even discussed or in the limelight again, if sadly it's a shout out to Ridley Funeral Home with grapes. So hopefully that's another decade or so away. But I think this story. What do you think? The story, maybe it's done for a while.
Yeah. Listen, nothing's for sure. It could be Don. It could be me. Like it could be any of us that when this story surfaces again. Right. So, you know what? It was a huge moment in Canadian broadcast history and in hockey media and whatnot, and cultural politics and all of that, that it still reverberates and still kicks up the dust 6 years after the fact. Not so very surprised.
Well, thanks for this, Gare. Always good to catch up with you. Next time you're in the T-Dot, we got to get together for a beer.
For sure.
And that brings us to the end of our 1,737th show. Go to torontomike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. Gare Joyce has a great Substack. Find Gare Joyce's Substack and subscribe. You can thank me later. Much love to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery, Palma Pasta, Toronto's Waterfront BIA, Toronto Maple Leafs Baseball, RecycleMyElectronics.ca, Ridley Funeral Home, and for the last time for a couple of months, Building Toronto's Skyline with Nick Iones. Thank you, Nick. The next episode tomorrow will be sponsored by Blue Sky Agency in place of Building Toronto Skyline, and we welcome Doug Mills, who has stepped up to help fuel the Real Talk. If you want to step up and help fuel the Real Talk on Toronto Mike, reach out. It's Mike at torontomike.com. See you tomorrow.